Let's go! Gator! It's gonna be a football game tonight now. No doubt. It's gonna be a football game here. Okay. I done been here before. All right, let's go, baby.
9. Rushing 4, ball comes out of the hands of Newton. It's on the ground, and it's still on the ground. Picked up by T.J. Ward at the 4-yard line. Vaughn Miller did it again.
Alabama back on top of the college football world.
Ladies and gentlemen, football to the max.
Your host, Sean Garmer, Gary Vaughn, and Randy Isbell.
Hello and welcome to Football to the Max. And man, in just one day we have plenty of news to do a podcast about, because before this morning it seemed like we weren't going to be talking about a whole lot, but now there is. And this is kind of cool, guys, because I think shortly after our show that did the same thing last year is when we finally decided to drop all the other sports and it's all football all the time. Now we've changed the name. Now we're really into this. And it's been the weekend. How's everybody doing?
I've just been spending my time getting ready for, our little draft special on Thursday, trying to figure out where all these players are going to go. And I can already tell that our little mock that we're going to have today is going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, definitely. I've been looking forward to it as well. I mean, it's just been kind of a blast to kind of, do this simply because of the fact that we're not in fantasy football season just yet. And it's almost like we got a chance to have a little bit of that because, we got each other pinned down to certain picks, and one guy picks one, the other guy gets mad because I wanted that guy. I had him pinned here. So it's kind of fun. It kind of gives us a chance to kind of have some fun, little debates and competition. And so I've been excited about it. And, pretty good day overall.
Yeah, certainly. And what they're referring to is we are going to do our 2016 NFL Draft preview here as well, and we're going to do that in the form of a 2016 Round 1 mock draft. We did one last year. It turned out really bad. Not Kevin Williams' fault, but just the way we did it wasn't a very good format. We have changed the format this year, and we'll get into what that format is before we get to the actual mock draft. And we'll also talk about what the Patriots are doing down there in the second round, and then also talk about, some other players that are available and whatever when we get done with our mock. So, the big thing we need to be talking about right now, let's not further delay, the 2nd District of Appeals has already reversed the decision of last season. Tom Brady, 4-game suspension, and it's sticking this time because there's really not a way he can appeal it. He can, but the 2 courts that are left really don't like to deal with this kind of thing. So, do you think we enter a settlement where maybe he loses 2 games or whatever, even though he's already losing a lot less money than he was last year, $200,000 instead of $2 million? Or do you think he just takes the 4-game suspension and whatever?
Man, what a crazy news week we have going on here. We have the draft coming up. We get to figure out between Winston and Mariota, and now we have Deflategate. Wait, this is not 2015. We're still talking about this.
Oh man,
God, this is a joke. It's just the Deflategate was what? 60-some weeks ago, and here we are opening another podcast talking about stupid Deflategate. I'm over it. I'm done. Listen, this is going to go on until the season starts. Tom Brady's not going to give up. Yes, Sean, there's not a lot of options for him, but he's going to go through every possible option and then some. But I think the one thing I can almost guarantee is there will not be a deal. I'm pretty sure that that Roger Goodell has went, listen, we had possible deals, and you made me look like a fool and winning the court case before the season started. So I don't care what you do. You're not playing the first 4 games just out of spite.
Oh, yeah. I think that's the case, and I think it's the fact that I think Tom Brady's just going to be like, look, I'm tired of this myself. I don't want to talk about it anymore. I'm ready to get past this and move on, and they're not getting that much of my money anyway. Let's just get this done. And I think even Belichick and the rest of the organization is going to look at it that way. And now I'm sure Kraft won't. I mean, he hates this. I mean, he's blamed the NFL for all sorts of things because of this, saying that, they're just mad, they're successful, things like that, and which I understand. I mean, he's passionate about his team. He owns the team. He should be. But, I mean, I think, once you get this down to the fact that you got a hired court, 3 judges all working on this, and they say that, hey, the NFL is being fair, you got to go with it. You can fight it, I guess, but to me, I'm like, man, how far can you push this?
Yeah, this is going to be interesting what they decide to do. Daniel, who's in the chat right here, Mr. Daniel Anderson, he might actually join us during our live draft coverage. So, he says that there's no reason for Goodell to settle, just like Randy said, and he's right. I mean, this is going to be interesting to see if Robert Kraft even maybe can make some kind of deal with, like, hey, you kind of owe us one or whatever, whatever he can say to get this lowered. I don't think it will. I think they're going to have to deal with Jimmy Garoppolo being the quarterback for 4 games, and they've got 2 division games in there. They got Buffalo and the Dolphins also got to play the Texans and, of course, the Cardinals on that Sunday night game. The big games happening, all 4 of them. But now they've got to go get another quarterback. So what do you think? I've heard Brian Hoyer's name thrown out there, former Patriot quarterback. Or do you maybe make a trade for a guy we're going to talk about here in just a second? Or what else? Well, what do you think? Then maybe go in the draft and get another guy? I mean, just... What do you think?
It's possibly Hoyer as far as just a fill-in kind of a role, or just maybe a young rookie. Really, I think you're just going to see them just pick up a couple scrubs, really. I think Hoyer might be the biggest name, and they're just going to just run with Garoppolo for the first 4. I think Bill Belichick believes that his team is solid enough to get out of the first 4 games. They're 2-2. Probably won't beat Arizona. Maybe split the division games and just hope for a 2-2 record. I don't think they're going to go way over the top trying to cover up these games. I don't think you'd kind of hinted at Sam Bradford possible trade. I don't see the Patriots doing that just for that small amount of period. But Brian Hoyer I could see.
Yeah, Brian Hoyer or any other guy that can come in and just fill in will be fine. I mean, even if it was Sam Bradford, I just think that, it's going to be the Patriots. They're going to find a way to get around this. They're going to probably be run heavy. They're probably going to do whatever they can just to make it through these games. And knowing the Patriots, they'll figure out something. And I don't, know if it's going to be successful, but I mean, Belichick's a smart coach. I think he's going to have a game plan probably in a couple days here. It wouldn't surprise me if he stays up all night, 48 hours, really thinking about this, how he's going to get through it, and have it done way in advance. I mean, that's just the kind of coach he is. So I don't think if you're a Patriots fan, you're going to just think we're losing all 4 of these games. I think you're going to be getting a chance to see some success here when it comes to using the free agent market or, going another route, even if it's in the draft. I mean, who knows? They may get somebody they think they can just, hey, let's throw him out there. This guy's good enough.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is, too, just like Daniel makes mention, they're going to use Garoppolo, and they're going to be fine with that. I think you just got to have somebody there to back up Garoppolo in case something happens. You never know. I think as long as you go 2-2, I don't think you're going to win that Cardinals game probably, but, you beat the Dolphins or beat the Texans or beat the Bills. I think if you go 500, you're fine. You're not worried about anything. They're probably not worried about anything right now. It's 4 games, and they feel confident in who they got. Speaking of feeling confident in who they got, the Eagles like who they got at quarterback right now with Sam Bradford and Chase Daniel. They want Sam Bradford to be the guy, or at least that's what they're saying. They're saying all the right things right now. Well, Sam Bradford does not want to be the number 1 guy right now in Philadelphia because of what they're going to do in the draft upcoming here shortly in a couple of days. And he asked for a trade this morning. Or yesterday morning, sorry. I don't see how he has very much leverage at all.
None at all. Listen, the Eagles have a plan. It's for Sam Bradford to start this season and possibly next season, and then have Carson Wentz be the quarterback of the future. Wentz is a long-term goal for them, and they need Sam Bradford to be in there as kind of a stopgap. Bradford doesn't want to be a stopgap, but unfortunately, when you've been injured as much as he has and hasn't really been able to show his true potential, that's kind of just what you are. So honestly, if you're the Eagles, yes, he's asking for a trade, and he's talking about he's not going to show up for OTAs and all that. Honestly, I just sit back and go, okay, whatever. I mean, listen. I mean, kind of like what I was trying to say about the Panthers and Josh Norman is, listen, you play for us, you don't play for anybody at all. For them to cut Norman was ridiculous to me. So I don't see the Eagles going out and just handing Bradford to somebody for a 6th-round pick or something ridiculous. Listen, they may go, okay, if we get a trade that is, above where we expected it to be, we might be more inclined now to take those extra draft picks, but we're not going to go out and just try to hand them away.
Yeah, and there's no reason for them to do that. And, this is just a way for Bradford to try to get the word out there that he is not happy. He's letting them know by, not showing up to their facilities and training and getting ready in this off-season program. And that's what players do. They're, trying to hold out for money. This isn't money. This is just about the fact I think he feels like he's been kind of disrespected because it's obvious that they don't believe in him long term. And I think that, as any player would, believes in themselves and believes that the organization should be behind him. So that's where he finds himself now is, trying to find another home, find another place that I think he will be valued. Will that happen? I don't know. There's really not a lot of upside for the Eagles to do this because they're going to have to end up throwing Carson Wentz in the fire right away, which I think that they would like to avoid. Randy just mentioned Bradford was going to be the guy. He was going to be basically the guy holding the starting position until Wentz was ready. If this does go down and they have to trade him because there's no point in having him on the roster, then you're going to be asking a lot of Wentz, which, we've seen rookie quarterbacks do before. But that's not the dream scenario. And not only that, it's going to be hard to trade this guy with that money.
Doug Peterson has a lot of trust in Chase Daniel. So, they paid him quite a lot of money to be a backup. So it's not out of the question that, Chase Daniel still starts in front of him.
He's just a mark for Chase Daniel like I am,
But hey, he is the coach. He's the one that makes those final decisions. So
I know. And Chase Daniel's a good player. I've always liked Chase Daniel. I really have. But, I guess I can't say this because I'm being hypocritical for saying this, but I don't have a lot of confidence in him, but then again, I don't have a lot of confidence in Sam Bradford either.
Well, yeah, and then, if Sam Bradford goes out and gets hurt in the first game, it wouldn't have mattered anyway, right? So, that's the thing is, there are a small number of... he will only cost you $7 million against the cap. Right now, this season, he costs you $4 million next season. So it's not like we're talking about a ton of money here. There are teams that could go get him. 49ers could. We know they're looking for a quarterback. Could Chip Kelly want to reunite with him there? The Broncos, they're looking for a quarterback. Could he go over there to pair up with Mark Sanchez again and give him a run? I know Randy's going to hate me for saying this, but the Jets could make a play. They've been playing around with shopping Mo Wilkerson. You send Mo Wilkerson over to the Eagles and you put Sam Bradford there. I mean, there's other options I'm sure, for Bradford of teams that maybe you wait until later and see what happens in training camp, see what happens in the preseason if somebody gets hurt. But the Patriots even, I guess, if they really wanted somebody that, let's say something happens to Garoppolo, they won't necessarily miss a beat so bad, I guess. But any thoughts on those? Any thoughts on where Bradford could wind up if he does get traded, if the Eagles say, let's just not deal with this and see if we can get a second-round pick?
Yeah, I think the two most obvious options are Denver and New York. Both have quarterback issues. Obviously, the Jets are still very focused on getting Fitzpatrick, but, the draft is only a few days away. They were hoping to get it done by then. It doesn't look like it's going to happen before the draft now. So they have to look at other options. And obviously, like you said, Denver has Mark Sanchez as their main option. So, of course, they're looking elsewhere. But to me, if you do not see Sam Bradford dealt within, say, a week after the NFL draft, he's not getting traded. I think the longer this goes into the spring and summer, less teams will be interested in Sam Bradford because, listen, you're going to bring in Bradford to be your guy. He's going to be the starting quarterback for you next year if you trade for him. So the longer you wait, the less time he has to get incorporated with your offense, and then it becomes a liability even more. So the stock goes down. But listen, as a Jets fan, I know it's out there. Of course, the Jets need a quarterback, but if they give up more than like a third-round pick, I'm not going to be happy, and I don't think the Eagles would go for something like that. I know Wilkerson's on the trading block as well, so maybe something like that. But I don't want to see New York go out there and dump everything just for Bradford.
Gary, do you think that Sam Bradford could be dealt in sort of a draft trade?
He could, and that could be a possibility. But I question the team that does that. Unless you were really that desperate. And I really don't think the Jets or the Broncos are really just wanting to throw away draft picks. We know the Denver Broncos don't have high draft picks this year, but I think the Eagles are going to want some decent compensation. But not only that, these organizations are going to have to be able to take on the Sam Bradford salary. And I know the Jets will have a hard time with that. And I know the Broncos will still be questioning that because they didn't want to basically pay Brock Osweiler, so why would they want to pay Sam Bradford? And any of these other organizations, I think, are looking to go in the draft and get a quarterback. So it could happen. There could be a possibility. Maybe there's a team that wants to take that risk, but I'm not saying it's going to be a high possibility. It is a possibility, just not a big one.
Fair enough. I think Sam Bradford does get traded when it's all said and done here. I just don't think the Eagles are going to want to deal with the crap that is going to come with all this distraction and whatever, and especially once Carson Wentz gets traded and everybody keeps talking about him. And I know they're going to want him there. And they're going to keep saying that they do, and they don't want to have to deal with, oh, crap, what if Chase Daniel goes down? Then we got to deal with Carson Wentz being out there. But Carson Wentz was going to play at the end of this season anyway. We all know this. They can keep playing around with whatever they want to say, but it was going to happen. So I think this is going to accelerate the process, and we'll see where Sam Bradford goes, if that happens or whatever. Now, this happened right after we did the podcast, like the next morning. So this is really old by now. We all know about this. But Josh Norman signs 5-year, $75 million deal with the Redskins, with a $50 million in guarantees. Gary and Randy. Gary, you can't be too happy about now we have to see him 2 times a year.
Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun to see because Dez Bryant will be lined up in him in every game for the Dallas Cowboys. And, of course, all these other receivers, of course.
Don't
we'll
forget
see
Odell
Beckham.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Jesus.
Odell, and then of course, the Redskins will have Pierre Garçon and a couple of those guys. Deshaun Jackson will probably be the guy that they line him up against. But I think that this is going to be big for the Redskins. They definitely did a good job, and we talked about this. We were predicting, and none of us really wanted this or really thought the Redskins were going to get it done, but they did. I wonder about their salary cap. I question that decision. I know they needed a big name player. But, this guy is on his last contract, and they've got time with him, but not a lot of time. But, I think this is a good move for the Redskins, though. They needed something on that defense. They needed someone who was going to be an impact player. They did it here. I don't know if they really felt like in the draft they were going to get a guy to help them at this level, especially since they're later in the draft. So I think that's what the decision came down to. And not a bad one. I just question their salary cap.
Randy, how does this affect the Redskins draft now, and could they get rid of some of these? They kind of have a surplus at corner. Can't they get rid of one or two now?
Well, yeah, I mean, they're going to move stuff around a little bit, especially in the quarterback position. As far as the draft goes, I don't see it changing that much. As you said, they kind of had a surplus going on at that position, so I don't think it changes their strategy at all. Maybe they can throw a cornerback or two in some kind of trades. As you know, the second and third days are just full of just weird trades here and there. So I'm sure they could work some things out that way. But I just want to kind of touch on Gary's worried about the salary cap. I'm more worried about $50 million guaranteed. I mean, because obviously in the NFL, you can cut and get rid of players here and there. But that's a lot of money to guarantee to a guy who's 28 years old and has had one good season in the NFL. Now, Josh Dorman had an amazing season last year and was one of the main reasons why the Panthers were as good as they were, and he deserves to get paid. But that much in guarantees kind of scares me.
Mm-hmm. And I think that was the only way to get it done. I really do. I think he looked at the other teams that he was going to be visiting and says, these guys have all the money. I'm just here because they asked me to be here. This was the first stop because I figure, hey, why make the team that I think I'll be going to, why not raise this tab? Maybe the Redskins will offer me something. I'll go to Jacksonville and say, look, they're going to pay me this, and I can raise the bar. And what ended up happening is the Redskins raised the bar themselves, and I think it could hurt them in the future. I really do. And I'm not saying that, I'm trying to be biased here, but I've seen this happen. The Dallas Cowboys made a big purchase when they got Brandon Carr, who I'm talking about, and that was a $50 million contract, and they have not really seen that much value out of him. And he was one of the better cornerbacks coming out of the free agency. So we'll see. One good year may prove to be more than one good year, but I have fears.
There's just one name that always comes to mind when you see like big cornerbacks get these crazy contracts on new teams after one or two good seasons. Do you guys remember Nnamdi Asomugha? And how he was supposed to be the next huge thing, and then got, signed by the Eagles, I believe, right?
Yeah.
For just a ridiculous contract, and was never heard from again.
Yep. Never. After one good year with Oakland, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So we have a question here in one of the groups where I posted the live feed here. He's asking, do you think that the Rams will trade Nick Foles, and what would they get for him?
Ooh, it's possible. Again, same thing with Sam Bradford, that they trade him, because he would be a very serviceable backup or somebody that you can have play the first half of the season or first year. But he fits right in that Sam Bradford role where his time is very short there. So you're going to have teams ask around, but I don't see it being worth very much.
I think it will be once somebody gets hurt and they're really looking for a quarterback, because I think Jared Goff is playing day one. Case Keenum will back him up, and then you can get anybody else to back up Case Keenum. I don't think that you really need to pay all that money to Nick Foles to be your third quarterback. Try to see if you can get a third or fourth round. I think at the most you get a fourth rounder for him. I don't think you'll get a second or third round. You're certainly not getting a first round for Nick Foles. The guy's already proven that he's not as good as they were making him out to be. I mean, he had that really good year in Philadelphia, but it's possible, I guess, maybe with a different kind of talent around him and a better offensive line. Maybe, but I don't know.
Yeah, and he still has 2 years and almost $25 million on his contract. So it's tough. Like we were talking about Bradford and his contract. That's tough to eat up for somebody that you're unsure of.
It really is, and that could be the deal breaker right there. So, I would think if you're a LA Rams fan and you're really wanting to see some more draft picks and you're hoping, hey, we got a bargaining chip here, that's great, that's dandy, but you got to have someone to buy that, and I just don't know that anybody is. I think Nick Foles stays where he's at, and is a decent backup. I mean, if something happens, and which we're all assuming, we know who the quarterback is, the rookie quarterback's going to be starting for there. That kid may, get injured. You never know. And you're going to need somebody to come in there who's had experience. Hey, I may not like Nick Foles, but he has experience in this league. He's done it for a while, so he can at least step in and help.
Certainly. So the San Diego Chargers, Roger Goodell was out there at their big meetup trying to announce the stadium plans and the renovation to the San Diego Convention Center that they were proposing to be done. The NFL has committed $300 million to assist in this stadium solution. They need just under 67,000 signatures from registered voters in San Diego to qualify for a November vote to see if the city will help at all to make a San Diego Chargers new stadium a thing. Do you think that the Chargers will stay in San Diego now after hearing all this?
No, I'm still in the boat that San Diego is going to end up in Los Angeles. We saw a lot of this happen in St. Louis here this last year before they moved to Los Angeles. Kind of that last-ditch effort of how much money are you going to give us to stay here? How much? Are you going to reach this bar? Yeah? No? Okay, we're moving. And it's kind of how I see it here. I think they might even get enough signatures for the vote, and then once people realize it's going to change their taxes and all that, they'll lose interest in it and let the Chargers move on to LA.
Yeah, that's the deal with me as well. I mean, as much as I personally would like to see them stay in San Diego, and I know a lot of the fans over there want them to stay, I just have problems with the fact that I know how cities work. I know how they value their budget, how they value what's going in the city. Once again, I always rely on what I know. What I know is the Dallas-Fort Worth area because I live there. And I look at the fact that the Dallas Cowboys have never had a stadium in what we would call the city of Dallas. Why? Because the city would never pony up money. They would never be the type to say, look, we're going to help or we're going to make things right. They never would do that. Well, then other cities around the North Texas area ponied up the money and got it done there. And we're seeing this with other sports teams. There's plenty of sports teams in leagues that don't actually reside in the city that's on the billboard. But my point being in this is San Diego doesn't seem like they've been wanting to pony up the money. I don't imagine they are going to. So that means that relocation is going to happen. Do I believe it's going to be close by San Diego? No, I really kind of think what Randy was talking about is going to be pretty darn close to true. LA wants to, have some teams there. More than one's better for them. So I think that's what probably is going to happen. I'm going to be sad, but it's probably what's going to happen.
I had to see the Raiders moving there because that stadium is terrible that they play in. And even if you get some kind of deal going in Oakland, they are going to sell out season tickets for the first time ever, the Oakland Raiders. But that's down to the team being very good, and that's part of that. But that doesn't mean that you'll get a stadium built because the team's very good right now. I just see the Raiders moving out of that terrible stadium, and whether it's in another stadium in Los Angeles or they move to that one with the Rams, I think San Diego having all this stuff ready and done, we know how much a new stadium can get people to actually start going to things. You have a new stadium, you renovate the San Diego Convention Center, I think you can get all these people to start going to these games that had no interest in going before. I have a feeling it's going to get done. It seems like Roger Goodell is very adamant about wanting to keep them there, and they are much more adamant than. Remember, it was all about the owner with St. Louis wanting to move them. It wasn't so much about the city and all that stuff or whatever, not necessarily ponying up money. It was Stan Kroenke wanted to be in LA, no ifs, ands, or buts. And this is not the case here. I think the ownership wants to stay. Roger Goodell wants them to stay. I think they wind up staying. Unless you guys want to rebut me on that, we have one more thing we need to talk about.
No, I think we're good.
So NFL and CFL have now entered a partnership for a refereeing program. Basically, there will be NFL refs that will go and be refereeing CFL preseason and regular season games in June and July. And then CFL officials will join the NFL's official development program. So basically just getting new refs in both leagues, kind of trying to help each other out. Do you think that this helps at all, getting sort of new refs that are not used to this NFL system and they can sort of get coached into this, or is it bad that you have refs that have not been in the NFL all the time, or what do you think?
It's an interesting idea, but the thing I worry about is we have refs that don't understand the rules as it is now. So now we're going to have them go do CFL games where the rules are different. So now they're going to be completely confused when they come back to the NFL next season.
You gotta love that, don't you? Oh man, I get that they want these guys to have experience. They want to make sure these guys get out there and do something to really prove themselves. But I mean, I kind of agree with Randy on this. It's kind of a bad idea to kind of mix up the rules and have them do this. For me, it would need to be in a consistent basis. But experience is experience. Maybe that's what they're going for.
Has the CFL figured out what a catch is yet?
Maybe they have. Yeah.
Well, maybe that'll fix it right there.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, being positive is always good.
All right. Well, let's get down to it. We do not need to waste any more time. Here it is. Our way of doing an NFL draft preview, doing a round one mock draft. This also helps us when we do our NFL Draft Live coverage, which we'll try to simulcast between here on Spreaker and doing it for Rabble as well. See if I can make that work on my computer. And, so far it'll be me and Randy. Gary should be there. He's going to try to make every effort, and possibly Mr. Daniel Anderson. And I'll see if any of the Last Word on Sports guys or anybody else will want to make an appearance here and there during the whole 3.5 hours or so, or 4.5, because we're gonna go on at least 30 minutes before the thing is supposed to start. But we'll see how that goes. But anyway, so last year we did this in a terrible way, where we went around the horn for every single pick, and it took forever and ever and ever. We're not doing it like that this year. We each have our teams that we're sticking. We have these picks. We have our teams. We've already made the picks. We're going to debate them. We're going to give you information that we have on these players and why we think they need to go here. And we'll have some debates here and there if somebody does not like that pick for whatever reason. But we're going to try to make this more streamlined and not have this take 3 hours. So hopefully this is fun, and we can just have fun debating and then laughing and whatever else. So The Los Angeles Rams are now on the clock. And Gary, you have the first pick. Who are you taking?
For the LA Rams, I feel it will be Jared Goff from Cal. This kid is a 3-year starter at Cal. He was primarily a shotgun guy. He really had a great spread offense there. They really did a lot of, good things there. He's got great height to kind of help them, kind of be standing strong in the pocket. What they really like about this guy is the fact that he has quick eyes, he has quick feet, and he even has a quick release. So these are all great things in a NFL starting quarterback. That's what they need here. His arm is not the hugest you've seen. There's other quarterbacks in this draft that have better, arm strength, but his balls look really good. He's the kind of guy that tries to get the ball in tight coverage. That's also got him in some trouble. So we've seen that, but on the other hand, it's a guy that is able to take advantage of his athleticism. But once again, he's probably one of the better prospects of this draft, and he has a lot more of the mechanics that they want to see in the NFL. So I feel like that's why the Rams are going to choose him number 1.
Makes sense. All I remember is that Gary said his balls look good. That's about the only thing.
Hey, that. You got to have something to sell in the shower.
Okay. Anyway, look, the Rams have made it very obvious that they're taking Jared Goff. I don't think that we need to really spend so much time. I think there's not a debate here. You can make the case that maybe Carson Wentz is better in certain areas, but it feels like Jared Goff, that guy, he's ready to go day one. That's what they want, and seems like that's what they're going to get. The Eagles have moved up to number 2 after that trade with the Browns. Randy, the Philadelphia Eagles are now on the clock. Who do you got?
Yeah, and I'm not going to go with any kind of surprise here. The Philadelphia Eagles, to me, will take Carson Wentz, and to me, I'm not sold on it, to be honest. Just from his track record, he hasn't played anybody at North Dakota State, and really, like his numbers do not jump out. I think the thing that jumps out for the Eagles with Carson Wentz is his body type. 6'5", 237. He looks like an NFL quarterback already. He looks like the new age Ben Roethlisberger, and they're sold on it. They feel like they can take this kid with that body type and turn him into their guy, which I do still believe is in their game plan a year or 2 away, but they wanted to make sure that they got him now. They moved up to get him, but unlike Jared Goff, I don't think you see Carson Wentz start week 1.
Anything you want to say there, Gary, at all?
No, I totally agree. I think Wentz is, once again, he is the guy that'll be right there in their lap, and I think that they're going to see him as a guy that's going to get better. I just think that they feel like they can develop him even more, and I think that's a positive. So it's a good pick.
Yeah. So we move on to now what is the draft actually now starts, because we pretty much knew what LA and Philadelphia are doing. The San Diego Chargers are at number 3. They have been trying to trade out of this pick. Who knows? Maybe on draft day it happens. But right now, the San Diego Chargers are on the clock. And the San Diego Chargers, they have problems. Big problems at offensive line last year. They changed that offensive line so many daggum times. We had no idea who was playing at certain parts between Randy and I when we were watching some of these games. It was insane. And so, I know you got King Dunlap over there. I know you've got Barksdale over on the other side. But you know what? I think you cannot go wrong with what could possibly be the best player in this draft. You go with Laramie Tunsil, left tackle from Ole Miss. This guy, 6'5", 310 pounds. He moves. He has great feet. He has the great hands. The only problem is sometimes he kind of has to reach around sometimes when he can't stick the guy. But he's really good at pass blocking. Might have some issues I think it's actually the other way around. He might be better at run blocking than pass blocking, but either way, you cannot go wrong with this guy. He's going to be your solid left tackle for years, and Phillip Rivers will be so happy to know that he's going to be there. The only issue you might have with him is that he has not played a full season. He had this domestic violence thing last year that had him out for 7 games, and then he got a couple of injuries the 2 prior years. So that's something you might want to consider, but I just don't think you can find a better left tackle than you're going to get with Laremy Tunsil there at 3 for the Chargers.
Yeah, absolutely. You look at Tunsil, who everyone thought might be the number 1 pick this year before everyone got all cuckoo for quarterbacks. But this is the perfect pick, I think, for San Diego. And honestly, I think you see Phillip Rivers on Thursday knock down Roger Goodell so he can make the announcement himself.
No, that would be something. I would love it. Yeah, I mean, you guys made a good point. I mean, this offensive line needs help, and this is the guy to do it. He's going to be an anchor on that offensive line for a long time to come. So that's definitely a solid for not only Phillip Rivers, but for the next guy that shows up. And, that next guy is probably going to be young. And anytime you can help out your young rookie quarterbacks with a great offensive line, you've already won part of the game. So I feel like this is a good decision to make for now and the future.
Yeah, Daniel says the new tagline for the Draft Podcast is the balls look good.
Oh, I like that.
There you go. Yeah. So now we move on from the San Diego Chargers to Gary. The Dallas Cowboys are on the clock, and they have all of these defensive stalwarts at their disposal. Who are you picking?
Yeah, there's been different names come out here. Joey Bosa was linked to the Dallas Cowboys for a long time. We've had other guys, but, the one guy that I think, if he's on the board and they're looking for defense, I think they go with Jalen Ramsey, one of the better defensive players in this entire draft out of Florida State. He's a great player. He definitely has had experience all around the defensive backfield. He's played corner, safety, and even nickel. So he's been a guy that, has done it all. He's tall. He's got the long arms. He's got definitely a great short area quickness. So really the Dallas Cowboys may be playing him at different spots. They really want to play him at corner, but, they can always use safety help. So we'll see. The reason that a lot of these teams, and this is the big debate with amongst teams right now, is the fact that he just fits so well at safety because of the fact he does have that quickness about him, and he can definitely cover well in front of himself. He has a little bit of trouble when he gets going down the field, and his back is turned to the ball. We've seen him be inconsistent there, but when everything's in front of him, he's an excellent player. He's very instinctive. That's another thing that teams like about him. He can read defenses really quickly. He's got a great reaction. He closes in very well on tackling. So, not just because he's versatile, but because of his explosiveness, this guy would be a great pick for the Dallas Cowboys. They could definitely use him. They've actually got some corners going to be going out pretty soon. Mo Claiborne's the guy that could be in free agency next year. Even Brandon Carr could be another guy. So Dallas Cowboys are going to try to find the best player available, and this is probably going to be the best one on the board.
Brandon Carr did take a pay cut today to stay with the Cowboys. So that's something that should be noted. Jalen Ramsey, again, another guy that could be in the running for best overall player in this draft. I think, if anything, he can be sort of the honey badger, the Troy Polamalu, the guy that you can stick anywhere. A guy that can, very much like a Byron Jones, that you can have him play in different positions if you want. And I think that's something that the Cowboys really need right now. Look, they got so many things that they need, especially with DeMarcus Lawrence and Gregory going down. You could really make that case for Bosa. But if you look at a guy that's going to be there, and he's durable, and he's got great talent all the way around, man, I don't think you can go wrong with Jalen Ramsey at all for the Cowboys. Anything you want to say there, Randy?
No, basically you guys hit it right on the nose. How, if Ramsey does go to the Cowboys, it'll be a great fit because exactly how you guys have been putting it, the versatility of Ramsey, where you can put him in different spots, and then you're not necessarily building a defense around him, but you can build a defense and put him in different spots. It's not going, well, we have the safety figured out. It's, well, we have this other safety, so Ramsey can now be the cornerback. He can move around and really help your team out in many positions.
Well, Randy, we move on now to the Jacksonville Jaguars. They were huge into wanting Jalen Ramsey, but you still got some defensive prospects out there. They are on the clock, and who are you taking?
Yeah, the Cowboys messed things up a little bit for the Jaguars, taking Ramsey. I think they really would like him to make Andrew Luck's life and Mariota's life and Brock Osweiler's lives miserable. But with him off the board, they're going to go ahead. They drafted Dante Fowler Jr. last year, who tore his ACL in the preseason, and they never got to see him play. I think they get excited to have him back, and they draft somebody to kind of work with him, and that man is Joey Bosa out of Ohio State. I think that combination for years could be just stellar for the Jaguars. I mean, you see some of the defensive combinations with J.J. Watt in Houston working out really well, and I think you could see that for years here for the Jaguars between Fowler and Joey Bosa.
All right. Gary, anything?
No, I think Joey Bosa he's one of those guys that is definitely a starter pretty close to day one. He's a great run defender. That was a big part of his game. He's got some ability to pass rush as well, but I think he's really going to be good in Jacksonville because of some of the things Randy just said, and of course with Fowler being the guy that's going to be the heavy pass rusher, that gives Joey Bosa an advantage at times because he will be single covered on those rare chances that they don't put a tight end on his side. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do, and I think that he would be a great pick for Jacksonville.
All right, we go from defense back to offense with the Baltimore Ravens as they are on the clock. And once again, I'm sitting here talking about an offensive lineman for the Ravens who they lost Yosemite to the Raiders. So you bring in and you replace him with Ronnie Stanley from Notre Dame. I mean, he could have come out last year and been great. He stayed one more year and improved himself tremendously. This guy very much like Laremy Tunsil. In fact, there are teams that have him rated above Laremy Tunsil, honestly, saying that he might be the best lineman in this draft. I mean, everything that I said about Tunsil holds true for him here. He actually can drive block much better. He has more power than Tunsil, which is kind of one of those things. He's got the great hands and the great feet that you expect with an offensive lineman. So definitely, I don't think you can go wrong here if you're the Ravens and you're looking at that stalwart left tackle again to block for Joe Flacco for however many years he's got left. Anything from you guys?
Yeah, obviously, anytime you can get a really good left tackle, you go for it. I think this is the first time I kind of disagree as far as the placement. I think there are other needs needed in Baltimore that I may attack first. Maybe a Miles Jack to get that, for the linebacker core, or a DeForest Buckner to put on the defensive line. I think defense is probably more where Baltimore may be looking. But if they get a Ronnie Stanley, I think they're just as happy.
Yeah, I agree. And, we're looking at Baltimore, and they're going to try to pick one of the better players available. And, whoever lands in their lap is probably going to be that guy. But the one thing that I say is this, and I've heard different people say this, don't be surprised if they do something out of left field that people are not really thinking about. And that's the fact that if Ezekiel Elliott does fall to them, they would be very interested in him and taking him because they could see that their offense would be a lot better off. I mean, they definitely need the offensive lineman, but if they can get a guy of that caliber, that could be another name.
Oh yeah, I mean, and they got Bud Allen and why can't I think of his name right now? The main running back for the Ravens. What's his?
I thought Allen
Forsett.
was.
Forsett.
Forsett, yes. It's easy to forget.
I mean, he's not he's really good. He's not Ezekiel Elliott either. So, and he is coming off that big injury. It's possible that they could want to take Elliott here. They could easily take a DeForest Buckner here too. I think Miles Jack, he's got that injury, and it's gonna have to go to whoever sees his medical and says, I think he'll be all right. We'll have to see. But moving on from Baltimore, the San Francisco 49ers are now on the clock, Gary, and they might have wanted Ronnie Stanley. They certainly want offensive line help, but you're going somewhere else here.
Yeah, and I agree with you. They want offensive line help. It's a big need for them. But I think as they look at their board, I think they're going to find out that, hey, the value is definitely starting to go down in the draft when it comes to offensive linemen, but the defensive lineman is still there. And I think the second best defensive lineman right now is DeForest Buckner. And I think that they're going to look at that as a positive to help their defense. That's a big area for them that they need help on. He's been a 4-year starter for Oregon, and he's a guy that has rare height. He's a guy that uses his height against, the run. It really helps him, blocking, making sure that, he can take care of the run. He's also, a guy that's got a good backside pursuit, and that's going to definitely help them, especially when they're, maybe lacking at times on defense. He can definitely kind of pop back there and grab backs if they get through the line. When it comes to pass rushing, this guy is also, he's an active pass rusher because his hands are so good. He's just got a great pop. He can really get some separation when he gets the pop going, and of course that acceleration gets to the quarterback. So I just think this is a great pick overall for the 49ers. I think they really would have liked the offensive lineman, but if they got a defensive guy like this there in their face, I don't think they can pass him up.
Yeah, I'm right there with Gary. If Baltimore goes defense instead of offensive lineman, I think Ronnie Stanley is an obvious pick for the 49ers, but if Stanley goes before San Francisco's pick, DeForest Buckner's a perfect fit.
Agree on that, and we will move on to the Cleveland Browns, who have decided to they took that trade from the Eagles. I think they're going to wind up trading down again. I don't think they stick here, but Randy, you had to make a pick, and it seems like they almost need anybody.
Yeah, that was the first thing I messaged you when we were kind of going through our little mock draft earlier today. That can I just trade down? Can we just make that the pick? And you said no, we got to have a player in each position. So, because I really think I'm with you. I think Cleveland is going to move down. We've talked about a little bit how they have kind of tried to incorporate the money ball mentality from baseball into their team, and money ball in the NFL says draft picks are gold. And they're trying to accumulate as many of them as they possibly can as they try to rebuild this team. So I think you see them do that. But you're right. If they do stick here, they have so many options because they have so many holes. Do they go for the sexy name of Ezekiel Elliott and go there, or do they go best player on the board, or what? To me, I think they go best player on the board if they stick here. Yes, he's coming off the injury, but Cleveland's not looking to win next year anyway, so they're hoping he can just become healthy later on and have a long career. And that's Miles Jack, linebacker out of UCLA. It's just possibly one of the top 3 or 4 talents on this draft board when healthy. So I think if Cleveland does not move down, they look for the talent there.
I would not be surprised at all if you see Miami maybe trade in that spot and go grab Ezekiel Elliott, because we know they have Ajayi, but losing Lamar Miller, they now have a loss big time in that running back spot. Would not be surprised if it's them, and then you trade the Browns back down to like 13, even though I'm sure that they'll want to trade down more because you know they're looking for a quarterback. But Gary, anything you want to say there?
No. I think you guys kind of hit it on the head here, and I think that we all talked about the trading thing, of course, but Miles Jack is a great player. It's sad about his knee. Let's see what happens as the evaluations go, but there are certain teams out there who don't like it at all, and if his knee was healthy, he would have never made it this far. So I'm really curious to see if he does go this early or he falls even further.
Yeah, we'll have to definitely see. And then so we move on to the Buccaneers, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers now. Last year they went and got Jameis Winston at number 1. He proved to be one heck of a quarterback in his rookie season. Almost led to the playoffs at one point. They were certainly in the hunt for a while. And now here at number 9, I mean, they have certain issues, mainly around the defense than anything else. And all I've heard is that the Buccaneers really, really love Vernon Hargreaves from Florida, and I think that's where we're going here. I mean, he's one of those guys that he has no problem. He is not scared at all of making the play, and then it might put him in a bad position, but he wants to make that play. I mean, he had 10 interceptions over the last 3 years, 38 passes defense. I mean, this guy moves. He's just constantly going around. He can backpedal fast. I mean, he's really, the only problem with him is he's thin. He's not the big bulky corner. I mean, that's going to be an issue. We kind of seen him sort of when he goes underneath. He doesn't always make the best play, but again, this is kind of that same mentality. If you got the mentality of just going after the big play necessarily and not always making the right play, especially when you're allowing about 16.5 yards per completion. But as far as actually being a cover corner, a lot of people are saying that he's better than actually Jalen Ramsey is at actually being a guy that's covering your man constantly. But I think Tampa Bay cannot go wrong here in getting Vernon Hargreaves.
Yep, absolutely right. I think this is where Vernon's going to land, and I like Hargreaves. Definitely a great cornerback. I don't see him being the type of player that you put out on an island basically and say you have your guy and that's it. I see them working a lot of schemes where the safety help will be there to allow him to go for those big plays because it's going to be tough to contain him from wanting to make the big play. So I think in the right schemes, he's going to be phenomenal and extremely difficult to throw against. But I don't see him being like a Darrelle Revis type where it's Hargreaves is on the left side, so you can't throw it there at all.
Yeah, I agree. And, here's the thing, and this is what's funny about this draft is because if you ask me, Hargreaves is the best corner in this draft, probably. I said Jalen Smith earlier, but Jalen Smith, I mean, you're going to hear so many people, and I think you're going to even see with Dallas Cowboys if they were to draft him. He is more of an in-front-of-you guy, whereas Hargreaves can take on guys, put his back to the ball, and make plays. Now, is he, just to drop down, a corner that, a shutdown corner? No, he's not. But he's a playmaker, and he can make adjustments, and he can take on, interceptions and make sure things happen the right way for the defense. So I look at him as probably the best true corner in this draft, but, he probably will have to have some help.
All right, so we get to the number 10. We have now passed, we're getting out of that first 10 picks, and we have a NFC East, another team in the NFC East on the clock here, the New York Giants. Many possibilities here for them, Gary. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, I look at them and I really say to myself, okay, so they really need help everywhere too. They need help on the offensive line. They need help in definitely on defense to kind of make some things happen. They've really kind of solidified the defensive line a little bit there. They've made some offseason acquisitions. They really fixed themselves at corner, defensive line. So they really need to look and see what's best available for them. And I think that they're going to say, hey, really, the offensive line choices are kind of getting a little bit weaker here. We need to take a guy that really can make some plays. And this is a stretch maybe because of his injury, but I think if this guy can get on the field, this is a guy that they're going to love for years to come, and that would be Jalen Smith. Now, once again, he does have a severe knee injury, and they're hoping he can make it back. But this guy is a complete linebacker. He can play all the positions. He's really an inside linebacker, but he's played outside linebacker. He can do it all. He's a great speed. He can definitely blitz. He's a great run stopper. He can cover. He can do it all. I mean, he would be up there with Miles Jack if this knee injury wasn't worse than what Miles Jack is facing. So this may be a stretch, but I think this is a spot that the New York Giants need to solidify. I really feel like they may take a shot and just go with it and see if this thing happens. But, this is all just hearsay. They may have somebody else in their favor, but I just think this is the right guy if he's healthy.
I don't think Jalen Smith is going to even go in the first round, just me personally. I think his injury is going to scare too many people. If the Browns don't go Elliott or trade it to somebody, I think the Giants could seriously take a look at Ezekiel Elliott here. Rashad Jennings is okay. I know you got Darkwa and he's kind of that, but you take him and you've got your triplets for a little while at least, where you don't have to worry about your running back spot because you know what Elliott's going to do. I mean, you could easily take the offensive lineman here too. I guess Jack Conklin, you could take him here too. Just they got, like you said, Gary. They got a lot of things they could take here. But we'll have to see what winds up happening with the Giants. They could take a D lineman as well, even though they've got Olivier Vernon away, because you've still got the problems with JPP. Is he going to be able to get better with that hand? But we'll move on to the Chicago Bears at 11. They've certainly we know John Fox likes to improve that defense. They've got problems on the offensive side as well, but where are you going to go here, Randy?
Yeah, I'm definitely going with the defensive side, and we've already seen a couple cornerbacks go, and you kind of think Chicago might want to go there, but with Ramsey and Hargraves go, I don't think they reach for an Eli Apple or anything. So I look, at the defensive line and linebacker core and kind of look around trying to see what would fit best. And there's a guy out there that I've been seeing on a lot of mock drafts more in the 20 range and a lot of mocks, but I absolutely love him, and that's Shaq Lawson from Clemson, 6'3", 269. One of those players that had just showed improvement each and every year as he went along and became a stud in his junior year for the Tigers, and I really think his game is going to shine bright, in the NFL. So I reach for him a little bit here for Chicago and really think that he can become a productive part of that defense. But, I mean, I can see a few other defensive players. Again, I kind of reach for him, and a Sean Robinson or a Kevin Dodd could definitely fit here too. But I just like Shaq Lawson more than those guys.
Yeah, I think there is plenty of options, but I'm with you on this one because Lawson just has so much upside. He's a guy that, really gives defenses a chance to really, make their way to the quarterback and stop the run and do all those great things. And so, I've heard people say, man, we really know that, he could be later on in the draft and maybe he even finds his way, way down there. But I think that, if a team really evaluates him compared to some of these other guys, I think he is the guy they need to take.
Yeah, no problems there with that. I mean, I think Shaq Lawson is great. Wouldn't be surprised if he somehow winds up going earlier. He's been a guy I think a lot of people kind of slept on for a while, and then all of a sudden he's been jumping up in the draft a lot. Similar to his counterpart over there in Kevin Dodd, jumping up in the draft a lot. So it's going to be interesting what they wind up doing over there. The Bears heard them liking a lot of Leonard Floyd as well. So they've got options, certainly depending on who gets taken in front of them. And so we move on to the New Orleans Saints being on the clock. And, man, the one thing that we know the Saints need so bad is that they need defensive help. And I think that starts with your line, something that is huge in this draft. If there's anything that's a big deal in this draft right now, it's the defensive lineman. And I've heard a lot about the New Orleans Saints liking Sheldon Rankins from Louisville, and I'm going to go with Sheldon Rankins here from Louisville. I mean, he does everything with fire. I mean, he goes into blockers and wants to take them out. I mean, it's not even a joke here. He can fight against the double teams. You can put your best offensive lineman on him, and he's going to take his violent hands and he's going to smack him and smack you in the face and get right to that quarterback. And that's something that the Saints have been missing, big time, is that guy that's going to rush the passer and get into somebody's face and give that coverage a little bit of breathing room, because, man, they get torched back there a lot, and that's what you need. You got to put pressure on that quarterback so they don't do that as much. I mean, he's got a little bit of he's undersized. That might be something that you look at if it's a problem for you. He's not the best guy when he's actually trying to get around the corner, so you might actually use him more inside that way. But I don't think you can go wrong with Sheldon Rankins here for the Saints.
No, absolutely. Love that pick. It could be a spot here. You were talking, Kevin Dodd has been shooting up the draft board as well. Maybe he comes all the way up here to the New Orleans pick as well. But Sheldon Rankins, like you said, is a beast. A dark horse pick here, because it's going to happen somewhere in this range due to trading. But don't be surprised if the New Orleans Saints go out there and get a Paxton Lynch to be their Aaron Rodgers to Drew Brees, who is 37 years old. He's not going to be playing forever, so maybe it's a little high to me for it, but a Paxton Lynch there would be perfect, as he can then sit and learn from Brees as he finishes out his career.
Yeah, and that's a thought. And also another dark horse, if you ask me, is maybe they look at receiver. I think there's some receivers out here, not in Coleman, but also Treadwell, who could be options for them. They could look at that because of the fact that, Drew Brees could always use more weapons. So.
Yeah, certainly. So we move on now to the 13th pick, which is the Miami Dolphins, which they got from the Philadelphia Eagles. They have quite a few needs here, but Gary, you have them filling that big need that everybody needs to talk about.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be Ezekiel Elliott if they have to trade up for him, or if they actually have him land in their lap, which I still question that they have him land in the lap if they start right here at 13. I don't know that's going to be the case, but I'll just pretend like this is going to be the case because they love this kid and they are dreaming of him every night until they get to this Thursday. This kid has everything that you need in a running back. Not only is he a great runner up the middle, he loves to run north and south, but he can also get to the edge, and once he gets to the edge, he has great burst. He can get to that next level. He also is a great pass blocker. He's a kid who does not mind it. In fact, he finds it to be something that's important to him. He takes a lot of pride in his pass blocking, which is not always the case with star running backs. He's a great guy out of the backfield at catching the pass. So, I mean, this guy can do everything. He's a young player that has a lot of motivation, and that's really what this Miami offense needs. They need another guy to help just add to that firepower. They've already got some great receivers, and if they can get, whatever they can get out of Tannehill, this team could actually, really start really going well if they get him on board.
Well, nobody has anything else they want to say to the contrary. We now move on to the Oakland Raiders at 14. Christopher Hale was talking to me about, apparently the Raiders have been talking about maybe trading up for Ezekiel Elliott. But what do you think is going to happen here with the Raiders, Randy?
Yeah, I think the Raiders are definitely in that running for the Elliott sweepstakes wherever he does fall number-wise. I'm with Gary where I do think that Elliott will become a top 10 pick due to a trade up. He's going to be that sexy name that just people have to go up and get. But as far as the Raiders go, if they do not get Elliott, they have needs on defense that they need to fill. You lose Woodson, who retires. They were able to get Reggie Nelson, who should be able to fill the role now, but you're going to have to draft a safety at some point to look towards later on down the road. I think they can get that later on in the draft. So I look at linebacker here for the Raiders, and to me it really comes down to two, Leonard Floyd, Reggie Ragland, who's going to really fit the need better. To me, I went with Leonard Floyd here out of Georgia. Just, I mean 6'6" guy, he's going to just cause havoc at the line, both just be able to deflect passes and, rush the passer. I mean, the stride that he has is ridiculous, so his closing speed is going to surprise some quarterbacks. So I like Leonard Floyd here for the Raiders.
Oh, man, I love Leonard Floyd. He's one of these guys that has been on everybody's radar as of late. He's been zooming by. I mean, apparently he's even a top 10, top 5 pick material if things go a certain way. I mean, this dude is going to run through, and he could be one of those pass rushers we're talking about for a while. I really, really like this pick for the Raiders. Now we move on to the Tennessee Titans, who have, they were at number 1. They decided to trade down, and they're still going to be taking an offensive tackle here, a right tackle, and as Christopher Hale is overjoyed with this pick, apparently, by Randy, he says 12-4. Mark my words, guys, 12-4. What do you think? 12-4 for the Raiders? That possible?
I'll give him 10-6.
Yeah, I think 10-6, 11-5. That probably close enough.
I'll say fair enough. With the Broncos, we don't know what their deal with their quarterback is, and I mean their defense is getting better and better all the time, and especially you add Leonard Floyd, that's going to be a ridiculous defense. And who the hell is going to stop the Raiders? Seriously. Then that offense gets good. Who knows? I mean that's one of those teams we could be looking at a danger zone for the playoffs next year. But moving on, we go to Michigan State's Jack Conklin. That's who I think the Titans are going to take here. He is he's somebody that walked on at Michigan State. He wasn't one of these guys that got all these offers and it was but he gave DeForest Buckner around from his money. He's got lots of power. He's going to he's going to get in your face, and he's going to get in with the blockers. He works well with the other guys on the line, so it's easy for him to move around and pull if he needs to. He's not the big athlete. He doesn't have that speed that you're used to seeing from the big elite offensive linemen. So that's going to be an issue. Are those defenders going to get in his face and cause him a problem? He's got a few issues here, but I think he's going to be totally solid for the Tennessee Titans if you're looking for an opposite tackle here.
Yeah, I mean, how great for the Titans. They trade down, get all of these draft picks, and they still get one of the elite offensive linemen in the first round to really protect Mariota. So just a complete win, I think, so far if Conklin falls to Tennessee.
All right, so we move on now to the Detroit Lions. They're on the clock, and they could do some crazy stuff. They've got plenty of needs. No more Calvin Johnson now. So you have to wonder if they're going to go offensive side. They need some offensive line help as well. You got defense is an issue. Where do you think they're going, Gary?
I look at this and I kind of evaluate where we're going here. And on the draft board, I would assume most of the better offensive linemen have left the board. And they're, also like other, NFL teams are evaluating and saying, okay, we could use a receiver, but do we really want to take a receiver right now? Do we want to do anything that really, jeopardizes us down the future? How do we want to feel? And I think that they say, well, we've got to get a defensive back because they're going to start flying off the board after this. So let's go ahead and get ours. We've got a guy in Eli Apple, who could definitely be the guy to help them get some tight coverage. He's a really physical player. He's got the height to do it. He's great at underneath coverage. He's just a guy that could really make them better when it comes to the defensive back spot. And any way that you can build that in free agency or in the draft is always a good thing. And, he's not a bad player. In fact, in rankings, I've seen him very high, in the top 20. And so that's a good thing, and I think that he's a guy that could really come and help them. Because last year we saw that, hey, they could get to the passer sometimes, but they just struggled because their defensive backs were not doing the job.
Anything here, Randy, you want to say?
Yeah, I'll talk about Apple in a minute.
All righty.
Gary made me mad.
I'm sorry, what?
You made me mad. We'll talk about it in a minute.
I apologize.
So we can move on to the Atlanta Falcons at 17, who are now on the clock. Who do you have the Falcons taking, Randy?
The Falcons are not being quiet, that they are looking linebacker here. And I think it's safe to say that there are a lot of good options that you can take here in the first round. Miles Jackson. We've already talked about Leonard Floyd, and we've already talked about Jalen Smith. The one that has yet to be taken, I have going here in Reggie Ragland from Alabama. Just another one of those really hard-hitting linebackers that it seems to be all the rage right now here in all of our picks. But he leads the Alabama defense with 97 tackles last year. He broke up 6 passes. He was the SEC Defensive Player of the Year. And for him to fall down here to Atlanta would be a steal, to me. So I think Atlanta would jump all over this if Reggie Ragland falls to them.
Oh, man, Reggie Ragland would be awesome for the Falcons. I've heard that they also big on Darren Lee for Ohio State. So, we'll have to see who they take, but I don't think they go wrong with either of those guys. Kind of just depends if you're looking inside or outside for the Falcons. So we move on now to, is it the Colts again? Yes, it is the Indianapolis Colts. And my God, I'm so tired of talking about them, but I have to talk about it again because we know the big thing, and Fonte talked about it all the time in his interview. Offensive line. Yes, the Indianapolis Colts need help on the offensive line. And the next guy that is available, Taylor Decker, out of Ohio State. This guy, we've seen him pull, and he can get in your way, no problem. He drives. He uses his feet to just blow open spots. He has no problem just using his feet to move out of the way and kind of do whatever he's got to do to make that block. This guy knows what he's doing. 3-year starter, a winner. I don't think you can go wrong with him. If there's one thing that he's not that great at, he doesn't move very well laterally. He's much better at kind of just popping right in and blocking. If he has to move too much to one side, it causes a problem. But I don't think you can go wrong with him at all here.
Yeah, actually, I think the weakness that you just stated, it would be the reason why I would look elsewhere. Maybe LaRaven Clark or a Cody Whitehair before a Taylor Decker for the Colts, just for the fact that you know that you're going to be throwing the ball a lot with Andrew Luck. So Decker will really need to be able to move laterally and be able to move around. And until he's able to figure that out, I don't know if he's the perfect fit for the Colts, but I do think he's going to be a great offensive lineman.
All right, so we move on to Buffalo Bills at number 19. They're on the clock. And Gary, who do you think they're taking here?
Well, I think that they need help in different positions like we've been talking about, but the one thing I think they could use is some help on the defensive line. And Jaron Reed is a guy out of Alabama that I think can definitely help them. He's been a 2-year starter. Not only that, he's been a guy that has definitely helped the Alabama defense because of his ability to clog and block up the middle and really just stop the run. He's been a cement wall at times, and I think he could definitely help Buffalo, especially against the run. He's tremendous at that. He's got great range. He's a guy that's got enough power to penetrate in the middle during the passing plays. So he's a guy that I think will be a big asset to them, and he's had a lot of experience playing both defensive end and defensive tackle. So he's not only is he good in being a great run blocker, but he's also versatile.
Well, I don't know. I know that my team that I'm picking in a couple picks really wanted him, and you kind of outlined why. So I'm a little upset at Gary right now, but
Everyone's upset at Gary.
Golly, I'm ruining everybody's picks.
And honestly, I mean, I like the pick for Buffalo, but with them losing Mario Williams again, I look at a player like Kevin Dodd, who Sean and I talked about it before the podcast, where in a lot of my picks, he kind of was the second choice, and I just would never slot him in. So a Kevin Dodd would kind of fit in here too, but I don't think you go wrong with Jared Reed at all.
Yeah, I also think that this might be that first time that you hear Robert Kemdichi's name, who had the problems at Ole Miss. He has to be with a coach that's willing to deal with those problems, and Rex Ryan would be the first one that would overlook that and go with the talent. So, that all defensive line guys, can't go wrong with either of that. You're looking to replace Mario Williams, and any of these guys can help in that way. So we move on to your New York Jets, Randy. They are on the clock, and what do you think they're going to do here? Paxton Lynch. No, I'm joking.
Well, to be honest, I mean, I did consider it, but I, in all honesty, do believe Paxton Lynch will have been taken off the board at this point due to some kind of a trade. But even if our scenario went perfectly, I think the Jets avoid that for the reasons I talked about earlier, that Lynch is one of those guys that you bring in to start in 2 or 3 seasons. And we all know that if you bring in a quarterback to the New York Jets, the moment your starting quarterback throws an interception, they want the other guy. And that just would not be the perfect situation for Lynch, and I wouldn't put him through that. The guy that I really want for New York is the guy that Gary took in Detroit, and that's Eli Apple. I think he's a great cover corner who would fit well with that defense because, especially in that short range area, he's going to shut you down. And the Jets' defensive line is going to make the plays pretty short, so he's not going to be stuck out in coverage. But I stuck in that range. I stayed with cornerback, and I went with the next available with Mackenzie Alexander. Again, I know the Jets need some extra help with the offensive line with losing to Brickashaw Ferguson, but I think we've taken a ton of offensive linemen already, so I think they kind of wait for later on in the draft. I like Mackenzie Alexander. A little worried of his composure, a bit of a trash talker over there at Clemson, but they like that in New York. I think his personality and New York and some of the sound bites you're gonna get would fit extremely well. And you put him opposite of Darrelle Revis, and he's going to be able to learn a lot and become one of those top tier cornerbacks. So I think that would be a good pick.
Yeah, well, you heard it from the Jets fan there. He is certainly given him lots of different options. And we move on to the Washington Redskins, who may have been looking at a guy like an Eli Apple or another defender there. But, they filled that need with Josh Norman. So right now I think you're staying with that defensive line help. I mentioned that it looked like they really wanted Jerron Reed. That's the guy that they've been talking about. I'm going to stick in that area, and I'm going to stick with the same school, Alabama, A'Shawn Robinson. I think he's getting a little bit overrated at times right now, but he's still a great guy to go get if you want defensive tackle help. I mean, he's huge. He's going to he not only can get there and get in your face and actually get through your linemen, he will eat up the block so that the other linebackers and other guys can get free to blitz if need be. He's great at he's stuffing the run, because I can't talk right now. And, he does all those things you want him to do as far as just in the basics. The only issue is sometimes that motor that he has doesn't run all the time. So if he gets beat on a block, he's not going to go necessarily try to actually find a way to get through it. He's kind of just going to be there and be fine with that. I mean, he doesn't necessarily fight through double teams enough as you want him to. He's not going to necessarily go through and fight and drop his pads and do all that. So there may be some issues there with him. I mean, you're not going to get a much better interior lineman, but you also got the negatives. I think overall, if you get him in the right system, and I think necessarily Washington, you know how great their nose tackle was last year, they're going to need that play from A'Shawn Robinson. I think you'll get it here, but I got my worries. So quietness from you guys. So we're going to move on now, and here's somewhere we might actually get into a big debate, because Gary's got this next pick with the Houston Texans being on the clock. And what you got here, Gary?
When we're looking at the Houston Texans, they could definitely use many different positions, but the one position that I think that would be a help, and not only that, it would help young Brock Osweiler, would be to get a guy like Laquan Treadwell. This guy has great hands. He's able to use his power and hand ability to get away from defenders. Great underneath routes. He can do a lot of things like that. Now, he's not a guy that has a lot of bursts. He's not going to beat you deep, but he's a guy that usually he wins the battles when it comes down to it, when you pass the ball in his direction. So I think this helps their offense. I mean, they could use some other positions, but Laquan Treadwell, if he falls this far, he's a guy that I think that they'd be excited about taking.
I don't think they can go wrong with being excited about taking him. The thing is, Laquan Treadwell is another DeAndre Hopkins. You don't need two DeAndre Hopkins on your team. You need a different kind of receiver. And that's where I think, Randy, let's just lay it out here. Randy takes Will Fuller next because Gary takes Laquan Treadwell, and I took Josh Dotson for Cincinnati after that. Personally, I think Randy kind of agrees with me. Laquan Treadwell works way better in Minnesota, where you need that number one guy. You don't have the guy that's going to get in your face and make those 50-50 balls and whatever. You already have that with Houston. I think Houston's going to try to find a burner guy like Will Fuller, who's extremely fast, gets down the field. You just need that guy that's going to be fast over the middle sort of thing. That's sort of what I think Houston's going to be looking for. But it's not a bad thing. Laquan Treadwell is the big number one receiver in this draft. And if you're just going to go for your best guy available, best receiver, Treadwell's not wrong. But what do you think, Randy? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm kind of with you where all three of these guys could really fit well. Honestly, I mean, I do agree with you that Treadwell would fit really well with Minnesota, just because he could be that number one talent kind of player. But to me, I like Will Fuller as far as all three of these guys go, just for the fact that his speed can really spread out the offense. I think maybe Will Fuller works better in Tennessee as a complement to a DeAndre Hopkins. But if you put Will Fuller in Minnesota, which is where I have him at, I got lost where I'm at. Yeah, since Treadwell went to Houston, is just, his speed, you put him and Diggs and Jarius Wright out there all together, and you just use all that speed to go down the field and open up the middle for a Kyle Rudolph or Adrian Peterson to dump it off to, and I really think that makes life difficult for defenses. So to me, I think Will Fuller fits better for Minnesota, but I understand where you think Treadwell would be the better player.
Yeah, and I can definitely understand that too, Sean. And I was really kind of going best player available, and I thought to myself, you never know with contracts these days, how long are guys going to stay around, and maybe they say, well, Hopkins, you stayed here, but we still have another guy that's going to, play a couple more years for us, and we can go cheaper with him. And not only that, I look at Jalen Strong and a few other guys that will probably have on this receiving core that will probably play the role of a speedster. So I was going more best player available, but I definitely understand, and Fuller would be an excellent addition to the Texans.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you there. I don't think you can go wrong with any of these guys. I just think you try to find that complement, and Minnesota gets that number one big guy receiver that they really, really need. But again, Houston doesn't care what Minnesota wants. They're going to get who they need or who they want. And that's the way the cookie might crumble on draft day for real. You know, we don't know until we get to that point. I think if Cincinnati, if you're in there in that spot, take Josh Dotson out of TCU. He is a guy that's going to get you touchdowns. He will go out there and get the ball. You talk about in the air with that 50-50 play, he's going to do it. He's going to get it done. Cincinnati lost there are two main receivers now. You got Tyler Eifert, and they got to keep Brandon Tate, but they lost Marvin Jones, and they lose Mohamed Sanu. I think Josh Dotson allows you to fill that one of those roles, and they might have some other needs, but I think you definitely have to recoup on that receiver position there. So if we do not have any kind of rebuttal, anything, we're going to go to the Pittsburgh Steelers being on the clock. And Gary, who do you have here for them?
I think this is another guy that's going to get a lot of debate, and maybe if you guys don't debate me on it, I'm sure we're going to get letters from people, and I'm sure Randy's good friend who is a Pittsburgh Steelers fan will be calling in eventually to yell at me. But I think that and this is something to me personally, I believe that the Pittsburgh Steelers have lacked for quite a while, especially since Polamalu left, is safety. And Miles Killebrew is still on the board. And yes, he is not, a beast when it comes to all-around safety. But man, this guy is kind of similar to John Lynch, a heavy hitter, a guy that's just, man, when it comes to the run, he's going to stop anything that comes his direction. He's got great burst. He's quick to diagnose plays. Just explosive player, and I think that he could definitely help them. He can definitely cover running backs and tight ends. I wouldn't ask him to cover a receiver by himself, but this guy is just one of those guys that he's a high-impact player, and I think he would definitely benefit this Pittsburgh Steelers defense if they could find a way to get him on their team. He could also play weak side linebacker if they decided for some reason they weren't a fan of him, at that safety spot. He could definitely move down.
Well, I don't mind the player getting drafted. I just think it's a round too soon. Again, the safety position I don't see very strong in this draft. So, they can probably get Killebrew in the second round. And that's where I would probably disagree with you. I think you can go after a cornerback like a William Jackson III or an Artie Burns here in the first round. We still have some very good linebackers out there with, Darren Lee still out there. You go defensive linemen still. There's a lot of different places they can go where I think safety could be a second or third round pick for Pittsburgh.
That's what I was going to say too. There's a lot of these players still left out there that I would say go in front of Killebrew. I can totally understand where Gary's coming from here with the safety spot. But, that's one of those things that you can get later because it's not a strength, and it's maybe not something you even look for in this draft at all. Just go with what are those best players available at the D-line or at the corner or whatever. I think Artie Burns would be great. Obviously, you'd want if Eli Apple falls to them, which I don't think he will at that point. That could be taken by then, but... that William Jackson III, he's been a huge, been running up in this draft as far as somebody that these scouts and everybody likes. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see him taken in the first round. And why not a spot here for the Steelers? But you're not wrong here going for that need for the Steelers.
Yeah, and just to let everybody know, I knew this was a reach, and I just threw it out there. This is something that I've diagnosed as being one of their biggest issues on defense. Their defenses for years had, pretty good pass rush, some solid linebackers, but Polamalu made the thing run. And it just seems like last year it was one of the Achilles heels of that Steelers defense. And so I would not be surprised if they found a way to get a safety as fast as they could. And so that's why I threw that in there. I think you guys are completely right. There's plenty of people on this draft board that will probably go with the Steelers before he does. But I just, if I'm the Steelers, I'm afraid he doesn't make it to me in the second round because there's other teams in this, equation, and I think there's a lot of teams looking for safety. Safety is one of the hardest things to find in drafts or even in free agency.
Oh, you're right about that. Safety is one of the hardest things to find right now. So, Randy, we're going to go with the Seattle Seahawks, close to where you live. What do you have for the Seahawks here?
Yeah, the guy that I think the Seattle Seahawks are going to go for is somebody that you'd kind of mentioned earlier, having character issues, and I think Pete Carroll feels like he's one of those guys that can deal with character issues just fine. And they've went that route several times in the draft over the last few years. Some of them work great, some of them don't. But I think they go defensive tackle Robert Nkemdiche out of Ole Miss. You'd already kind of talked about him a little bit. One of the top prospects, great talent, just so many character concerns that you have to worry about. But if he can get that under control and Pete Carroll can harness his talent, he is going to be a beast in the Pacific Northwest.
I'm not disagreeing with you at all. If they can get the character issues down, he is going to be one hell of a talent. I mean, you talk about a guy that is going to be there for years, playing with him, getting in your face and making those sacks happen. You cannot go wrong with him as long as the off-the-field problems and the character is in place. And, Seattle, they know how to deal with those kind of guys. So we move on to the Green Bay Packers at 27. There's multiple things they could do here. They lost to Casey Hayward, so they could go in the secondary. I think the biggest thing is they lost B.J. Raji. And so I think you're going to try to find a guy at the defensive tackle spot that kind of fills that hole. And for me, I'm looking at Andrew Billings from Baylor. This guy, freaking deadlifting champion, 2,000 total pounds this guy lifted over there for Baylor. He is freaking, I already talked about his power. He is incredible at moving. He's going to move you. He's going to violently get at you. He has no problem trying to do anything he can to either stop the run or get into into the quarterback's face at all. He's quick. He's going to, if you're close to him, he's going to get to you. The only issue, I think, is if once he goes that way, because he's so quick at getting there, he's not good at being able to stop, change direction, and go the other way. And then that's the same thing. Like, if he has to stop, he's not great at being able to athletically move in that other way either. So, he's still kind of learning things because he did go from offensive line to defensive line, but I think he is, for what you want at a defensive tackle, he's strong, he's going to get there, and, he fits the bill there for the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, absolutely love that pick for Green Bay. I think they would jump all over that if Billings is still available here. The question, though, for you, Sean, one of the spots that I was really considering, I know the Packers weren't the team that I was drafting for, but just looking around, I know Jared Cook maybe takes that need away, but what would your feelings be if Arkansas's tight end Hunter Henry falls to Green Bay here?
Oh, I think that's
Yeah, go ahead.
You know what I'm going to say. It's the best. I think there might be, I might wind up liking like an Austin Hoover better than him personally, because there's things Hunter Henry isn't the greatest at doing. But if you want the bet, because Hunter Henry is just your receiving tight end, he's not going to block. So if you want the best of both worlds, that's not Hunter Henry. But if you want a guy that's going to go out there and run the routes and do the things that you want your receiving tight end to do, definitely would not be wrong for Green Bay to go get Hunter Henry at all. So we move on now to the Kansas City Chiefs. And Gary has probably the surprise pick of the entire mock draft here what do you have going on with the Chiefs, Gary?
Now, this is going to raise the question of how far this guy really does fall, and a lot of people projecting him falling even further than what I have him going. But I think that this guy would be a good fit, and not only that, it's a division block. If you ask me, I think that the Kansas City Chiefs evaluate talent, and I think they look at the future and they say, this is a good opportunity now to take a guy. We want to be good for years to come, and we hope we're in this position every year, drafting late. So when are we ever going to have a chance to draft another quarterback this late? And that is Paxton Lynch. Paxton Lynch is a young developmental type player. He's got a great arm. He really does, but he's got to work on a lot of other things. So he's going to need to take that time and sit behind a veteran quarterback. And this is a perfect chance for him to do that behind Alex Smith and to sit there and learn and to get the opportunity to grow. And Andy Reid's a quarterback's coach anyway, so he can groom him how he wants to groom him. This is just a perfect opportunity for that to happen for that franchise once Alex Smith is no longer in the picture. And I think it also blocks the Broncos from taking him later on in this draft. I mean, that could have been a possibility because they're still looking for their quarterback. So not only does it keep one of their division foes from getting him, but it also gives them the future right in their lap.
Yeah, I like the pick that Gary just made. I'm still under the belief that somebody will trade up and Paxton Lynch will go somewhere in the teens. But if he does go to Kansas City, I think that's a decent fit. And yes, that allows him to, be the backup for a year or two and learn. And when you're behind Alex Smith, you will learn how to throw the 7-yard curl route over and over and over and over.
Oh boy. Oh man. But you're right about that. But the one thing I love is the fact that Andy Reid being a former quarterback's coach. I mean, I think I could just imagine those guys, going over film and just learning together. And the quarterbacks that Andy Reid has coached, I mean, this guy has a great repertoire. So I'm looking forward to, if this does happen, this will be really interesting.
Yeah, I also think Paxton Lynch is going to be gone by this point. But if he's still there, I guess it wouldn't be a bad pick at all for the Chiefs. At some point you do have to think about the future. Problem is, like Randy joked about, I don't know that I want Alex Smith being the guy teaching me how to play quarterback. But, hey, look, Alex Smith does those things, does the kind of the weird things that some quarterbacks just don't do, and it actually works for him. But, Andy Reid is a quarterback guy, so this could possibly actually happen. Who knows? I think they wind up going defense for this thing, but let's see. So we move on to Arizona. As the Arizona Cardinals are on the clock, and Randy, who do you got taking here?
I had in here Paxton Lynch so early on, thinking that nobody else was going to take him, and then right before it becomes time for me to make that pick, Gary puts him on Kansas City and messes everything up again. Thanks, Gary.
That's all right.
But to me, I think Arizona looks defense, and to me, they look for that number 2 guy with Patrick Peterson. And, a lot of cornerbacks have went off the board here for us in this mock draft, so I go best available, and that's William Jackson III. But I think they can go all sorts of different places. The good thing about Arizona is they're stacked. So look for them to just find best player available at this point. We have not taken Kevin Dodd off this board. So it's not going to happen this way. But if Kevin Dodd somehow dropped all the way to the bottom of the first round, I think Arizona would jump all over that too. But for this, I went for their biggest need, and that is cornerback.
Yeah, I agree with you on this. William Jackson III has been a guy that's been rising. He's really good at they actually compare him a lot to Josh Norman. So he could fill a lot of. They have players at that spot already, like Randy mentioned, but never hurts to have that extra corner. And if anything, he can sit for a while and don't play a lot and learn from those guys that are there. So I don't see that as a bad thing at all. We move on to the Carolina Panthers, who, they might be looking at defender in this spot now because of Josh Norman leaving. We do know that they kind of like to find guys and put them there, that's certainly a spot that it's still available to them if they want, but they can also wait till later in the draft. This whole draft is sort of stacked with those guys. I'm going to go, Kevin Dodd has not been taken off the board somehow yet, and I'm going to take him here for the Panthers. They need that defensive end presence. Don't know how much more Charles Johnson's going to be able to do that. They have other defensive linemen that have contract issues after this year. You want to be able to cover for that. Kevin Dodd, I mean, the change from last year to this year coming out, 12 sacks in 2015, tackles for loss, just tackles for loss, 23.5 tackles for loss. I mean, the guy is going to run at you. He's not going to stop. He's going to constantly know where the ball is because he wants to be involved in the play. He's, just a guy that I don't think you can go wrong with having him. Only thing is, again, he doesn't have that whole experience of being over there on the line, but you can kind of coach that into somebody. I don't think you have to worry so much about the fact that he doesn't have years and years of playing there. You have to worry about his hands necessarily, but I don't think there's a whole lot negative to say about Kevin Dodd. The fact that he's down here is an indictment on us because he's going somewhere else in this draft much higher. But if somehow on earth he's down here, Panthers are taking him, no doubt. Anything from anybody here before we get to that last pick in round one?
I think some of my crazy picks have probably caused your pick to happen. I don't really think he's going to fall that far. But I do think it's a good pick, and it's definitely something that if this does happen, the Panthers will be glad to have it happen because of what you said. They've got to, worry about the future of this defensive line, and if they can go ahead and get another guy, they can let some other guys move on.
Well, we move on to the Denver Broncos, and Gary, you have the final pick in this mock draft that we're doing. What do you got for the Broncos?
So when you're this late in the first round, you really kind of think of it as, really right there, border to the second round. Really what can they do? Really what splash do they have? And I think a lot of the better players are definitely off the board here. I look at the Denver Broncos, and one of their biggest needs still is offensive linemen. If they don't get a quarterback, they need to go to offensive line and really keep that thing strong because they got to help Osweiler this year. A guy that I really like is Cody Whitehair. I think he's got a great base. He's a guy that's great against the power rush. He's not really excellent on the outside because of the speed he'll be facing in the NFL. It's just not very strong against speedsters, so I think they're going to move him into the offensive guard. I think that fits his skill set perfectly, and I think he'll do a good job. I think he'll be a really, versatile player on either guard side, so I like him at that. And I think that Denver Broncos would definitely succeed with having another offensive lineman.
All right. Well, that is your round one mock draft, ladies and gentlemen. We might have made some crazy picks. That probably will not happen. We might have made some picks that you never know could happen.
Well, I just want to say this real quick. It's kind of funny. Randy mentioned this before we got on air, and I think it's true. If I would have chose the guy I really wanted to at number 4, this entire draft is different. And I really had in my mind. I had one in Ezekiel Elliott. I went with the I guess you'd say smart decision, but I really felt like, if I would have chose Ezekiel, guys, this thing would have been turned on its head.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why this is so much fun to just, we know once Thursday comes, we're going to take our mock draft and rip it up because we're going to get only a few of these right. But it's just fun to kind of debate. And then all you have to do is go back to any of these picks and change one name, and it changes everything else because now new people are available, and we've said it many times. Kevin Dodd just kept falling on our draft board, and there's going to be somebody on Thursday that's going to happen to them where we think they're going to go really high, but just for some reason, they're going to just fall.
Yeah, for sure. No doubt about that because that always happens in the draft. But before we get out of here, The New England Patriots are the only team that have not picked yet. They don't have a pick until the 60th and 61st pick in that second round, which is towards the end of the second round. What do you guys think could happen here? Now, I think that with the questions you got at running back, you know what you have in Dion Lewis, but again, he's coming back from that big injury. LeGarrette Blount didn't have the greatest of years last year. I don't know who's going to be around there, but Derrick Henry, if he's still there, Kenneth Dixon from Louisiana Tech, if both those guys are gone for some reason, I think this is where my boy, Alex Collins, he can do both. He can do the running, certainly, and he can pass catch. Wouldn't be a bad fit, either three of those guys on the running spot. And, of course, offensive line, I think, is a big thing that they had an issue with last year with guys getting hurt. It never hurts to have another offensive lineman. I think a LaRaven Clark or Jason Spriggs or whoever's there for your offensive line, take one of those guys there. But any dissenting opinions on that?
Yeah, I don't know if they go running back in the second round. I think with the Patriots, they always kind of shy away from that position. They feel like they can put anyone there. But I agree, if like a Henry or Howard somehow dropped that far down in this draft, you might just have to take somebody like that. I do think they more look to the cornerback role or maybe fill some stuff on the defensive line. There are a ton of talent that are getting projected in that second and third rounds, so look for them to kind of fill it in there. But it's so tough to tell. I mean, we can't even predict who's going to go 7th, let alone who's going to go 60th. But I think that they go cornerback or defensive line.
Yeah, I'm kind of in agreement. I think, if it's the right running back, they'll definitely go that way. But I like a receiver, running back. I mean, they already have the best tight end in the league, arguably. So, I mean, they really don't need some of those offensive spots to really fill as strongly as they do to, keep working on that defense, make it stronger. And I can see that being a point of attack.
All right. Well, that's it. Do we have any other things we want to say about the draft? Whatever. This is the last time we're going to be talking about it. The next time we're talking about it, we'll be reviewing, and not only will we be doing the live coverage, we'll also be reviewing the NFL draft right after it happens, not right after, but in a few hours after it happens, we'll be talking about all those picks, who had the best first round and all that kind of stuff. So anything you want to say, anybody that you think is going to be somebody to watch out for in those later rounds, or anything you want to say before we get out of here?
Well, I just have one question really for the both of you, just to kind of see how we feel about this. We just made 31 picks. When this is all over, how many picks did we get right? I'm going to say we got 9 right.
Oh, wow. I'm going to go lower. I have a feeling that some of the picks I made really jack things up. I'll say 5.
I'm going to go with an odd number. I'll go with 11.
There you go. And as far as like players I'm curious about on later rounds, I'm curious about Connor Cook. I've been very high on him in college. Didn't have quite the college career that I thought he was going to, but I always thought he was going to translate well to the pros. I think he's going to go in the second or third round. Very curious kind of where he falls.
I'm going to be curious where my boy Jonathan Williams goes after he missed last season. Maybe 4th or 5th round. Don't sleep on that guy. I think he could be just as good as Alex Collins, if not better.
The guy that I'm so excited about looking and finding out where he goes is Dak Prescott. I know he had some issues, but that meant he's going to fall, and I'm just really curious to see who he falls to. I know my team, the Dallas Cowboys, definitely are looking to the future of quarterback, and could he be the guy? Could he be a steal in a later round? I don't know. But I'm wondering who's going to be able to take his services, because I'm thrilled about him.
Yeah, I hope that would be awesome if he winds up with the Cowboys, but we'll have to see. That does it for this edition of the podcast. Like I said, we'll be doing live coverage I know we'll be doing on Unravel for sure. I'm going to try to see if we can do a simulcast and do it on the podcast as well, have a live edition of the podcast doing the NFL draft. And then we'll be back around this time again doing a review of that round one and who did well, who didn't, who had the steal, that round and everything else. So it'll be certainly interesting when we get to that Thursday night, Friday morning deal. As far as everything else, we just finished off our Wrestle the Match. You can check us out, Talking Raw, talking those New Japan shows from over the weekend, some news, and everything else on the WTM Network. Go subscribe to that on iTunes and YouTube and Stitcher and wherever else you listen to podcasts. Randy, anything on your end that you want to talk about?
We just backlog busting project will be probably late today, if not early Wednesday. We haven't quite had a chance to record that yet. Wes has been a bit under the weather, but look forward to that as we talk about ActRaiser. I talk about a wonderful game that I saw on the Xbox One, Max, The Curse of the Brotherhood, which is sad that company has gotten shut down during the whole time where they shut down the group that made Fable and all of that. And Wes finally got his hands on my PlayStation Vita so he could play the Uncharted Golden Abyss game before Uncharted 4 came out.
All right. Well,
thank you to lastwordonsports.com real quick. They're great partners over there, and we make sure we give them a shout out as well. And that's about it.
All right. Well, if you want to hit us up with what you think about our mock draft, use that hashtag F2M on Twitter, or just hit us up on just use that at WTM Network on Twitter and just mention us there, or whatever you'd like to do. On the Facebook page, the WTM Network Facebook page, you can go on there. There's a post with the podcast, and you can just go in there and comment and give us what you thought or whatever. Did we do horrible? Did you agree with a lot of our picks or whatever? What are your picks? That's always a great thing to know. So until Thursday when we're covering this draft, see everybody later. Gotta love when you press a button and they don't cooperate.